Well, welcome back, everybody. You know, the first sentence of the popular business book, Good to Great, states, good is the enemy of great. I love that. My guest today is industry legend Jim Fowler, the CTO of Nationwide Insurance, which has grown from $42 billion to $60 billion in the last few years. Jim is someone I can tell you with confidence has never been satisfied to settle for good. Part of Jim's Good to Great story is how he turns his love of technology into a powerful driver of company growth, delivering productivity, inspiring innovation, and energizing global teams to achieve greatness. Over the past 20 plus years, Jim has excelled across multiple industries, countries, and companies. From these experiences, Jim is known for stating, and I quote, that businesses really understand the problems that they have until you show them a better way. One of Jim's great gifts as a CIO, CTO business executive is his ability to share a vision of what's possible. To tell Jim's incredible leadership story and to unpack those superpowers that set Jim apart as one of the best in the business, I've called on a number of mystery questioners, as you know we do here on the podcast, to really help me unpack his story. And so let's start off with one of these mystery questions to really set the tone for our podcast.
Jim, having been part of your leadership team, I had the privilege to learn from you so many great lessons in innovating, in making decisions, being accountable, creating value. But I'd love for you to tell everyone your perspective on what you think separates a good CIO from a great one, particularly in how to balance between operational excellence and visionary leadership.
So Monica Caldas, good to hear a question coming from Monica, who has gone from a peer to a competitor, a fierce competitor in the industry at Liberty Mutual. So glad to hear a question from Monica. It's a great question, Monica. Maybe a story that goes with this. And it was about 2 years into my role at Nationwide. I was getting a lot of pushback. One of the situations where there's just something not right with the relationship where you're getting a lot of pushback and you're not sure why. And this peer, I really wanted to have a conversation with them about innovation, around how technology was going to change their business, about their industry, and what I thought the possibilities looked like. And they just kept wanting to go back and talk about some quality issues and outages and impacts to their peers, ability to grow, hearing from customers and sales teams about issues that were coming up from a technology perspective. And so I'm going to maybe start the answer to your question, which is the last part of it, which is how do you balance operational excellence with it? And I think why I started this conversation this way is I wanted to have the great conversation around the future. But what I realized is I was stuck in a discussion around operational excellence because we were having quality issues. We were seeing outages that were impacting their ability to grow their business. They were hearing from customers. And so the first thing I would say about the balance is operational excellence is about kind of maintaining the credibility necessary to have a more interesting conversation around innovation. That if you aren't getting that part of the job right, no one's going to let you have a broader conversation. But when you do have that right, there's kind of 4 or 5 things that I look for in the leaders that I hire that are traits of great CIOs. One, they're inquisitive. They're always asking questions. They're always asking the what if we could, or what if this could be true. I think that's the first thing that you see as a trait. Second is they're really good storytellers. They have the ability to kind of create a vision that everybody can understand and follow and see how they fit into. And storytelling plays a big piece of that. They tend to be aspirational. That I think great CIOs can set aspirational goals and really challenge people to go faster and move quicker. In my career, guys like Larry Biagini and Gary Reiner are people who I think pushed me to do things much faster than I wanted. Jamie Miller, another great example of that. They're courageous. They kind of aren't afraid to take big swings. And then kind of lastly, they come with accountability, with transparency. They are open about what they're doing. Now, those traits are important, but maybe the answer to the question comes down to this, though. I think what makes a great CIO is really having the humility to use those traits to guide and support business partners in shaping the technology vision rather than insisting on owning it. And I think that's what goes from good to great is kind of having the humility to let the business partner be in the driver's seat and the confidence and the courageousness to be the navigator alongside them.
Jim, that's amazing. We could go home right now. I think you've just delivered just the big mic drop right out of the gate here. So great points. Those five traits. We'll come back to those. And thank you, Monica. I thought it was only fair. You had a great question for her podcast, and so and it was her question that really pulled this whole podcast together, Jim. In terms of the theme for you, it's like that whole what does great look like. So I appreciate that, and kind of putting an exclamation point on Monica's point. I was at the Terranea Resort, August 2023. You remember what was going on there? That's when you were inducted into the Hall of Fame for CIOs. It was just energy. It was amazing. And I'm sure you remember the night, but what was that experience like? Only a couple hundred of your peers have been inducted. It's a very small number. So what was that like? What was that experience like, Jim?
I think what everybody who is recognized at that level gets is that it's people that you worked with, like Monica, that helped you get there. And whenever have the ability to receive an award or recognition, for me, it's about all the people that helped me get there. And so it's kind of fitting that you're asking that question after Monica, because I've had the really great pleasure to work with a lot of really great leaders throughout my career who have helped me be successful. And so I found that on that occasion and many like it, I always go back to who were the people that were there along the way with me, because it's really their award, not mine.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It goes back to your humility for sure. And, I want to get into your nationwide story because it's so powerful, but I've got a few more mystery questions from your prior colleagues that I want to tee up that, again, is going to help us understand your leadership superpower. So listen into this next one.
Jim Fowler, how are you? I've got a question for you. In all the years that we worked together, you've always been one to sign up for big, bold challenges, relentlessly pursuing the biggest of outcomes. Tell me a little bit and tell the audience a little bit what it is about your DNA that draws you to that strategy, and how has that strategy served you well or not?
Aaron Powell, marathon, love it. What I love about Aaron is he's a bold leader, and he has been one of my truth tellers who has never been afraid to call me and tell me when I had something wrong or I needed to approach something differently. So a lot of respect for Aaron. Aaron, great to hear from you. Behind me, you see a set of scales. It's an old-fashioned set of scales. My dad was a pharmacist for 40 years in the same small store. And when he retired, I asked for those scales, and they serve as a reminder for me of the kind of the work ethic that he instilled in me and my siblings at a very early age. We all kind of grew up working at the store, and even once I entered into my work life, it wasn't unusual for on holidays for me to go back and work in the store with him. And I'd say that there's kind of one phrase that I go back to that I kind of picked up from him, which is be pleased with your work, but never satisfied. Always be looking at what you can do to be a little bit better at whatever it is that you're doing. And I suppose that's where this need to constantly push myself to take big challenges comes from. And I think it served me well. Those big swings have not always worked. Some have failed along the way. But I would almost say, and I would actually absolutely say, the learnings from the failures have been better for me than the the wins have been. I'm just thinking back about, a situation that I was in at GE where we were kind of end of the year. It's one of those things that you always regret later, where somebody had a software deal and we were taking a big swing related to manufacturing execution systems and trying to do better and trying to automate more of the work out in our shops across GE. And I made a bet, and it was a bad bet, on a partner that I thought was going to come in and help us deliver on that. And I learned that sometimes slow and steady win the race, and that you don't need to kind of swing at every pitch that comes at you from an opportunity perspective. I left the problem for somebody that they had to clean up later. And so I think what I learned most there is just remember, sometimes you're making a decision that's not going to be yours in the long run to have to deal with. And so you want to try to get it right. You want to be expeditious at making a decision, but you better have the data to back it up when you're making it. So again, I think it's great that, I always push, and I'm trying to think about what I can do or what we can do as a team to be better. I think I've learned along the way from the mistakes as much as I have the wins.
It's just great insights, the learnings there. I love the teaching from your dad. That's pretty great wisdom. And to your point, Aaron, just one of those incredibly humble, just great leaders. So thank you, Aaron, and keep up the great work there at Marathon. And got another one for you. I think you're going to recognize this name pretty quickly. This person very quickly, Jim. So listen to this next one.
Jim, for a guy straight out of Van Wert, you give pretty good advice. One of the pieces of coaching you gave me was that leadership is more about influence than authority. Why don't you share that with the crowd and explain why?
So Dave Burns, CIO today at GE Aerospace. And again, he was the last man standing, frankly, out of the leadership team that I worked with, who was there through the separation. So a ton of respect for Dave and heavy lifting. Dave brings up Van Wert. One of the things when I became the group CIO at GE that Dave manufactured is he sent a couple of people to my hometown, Van Wert, Ohio, and through a little bit of cajoling of my sisters with a bottle of wine, got an in-person, behind-the-scenes look at my childhood, which into a little bit of an embarrassing moment for me that at some point I will get to pay Dave back for. Influence, though, Dave's question. Twice in my career, I was given a job I didn't want. The first time it was a job that Charlene Bagley, when she was the group CIO at GE, asked me to do. And the second time was a job that Jamie Miller needed me to take on. These jobs were hard jobs where you had to make a big change that people didn't necessarily want. Both jobs had a kind of a common thread to them. And it's that they had all the responsibility for delivering something that had board level visibility that the board was unhappy about. And neither role had the authority to unilaterally make the changes necessary to fix the issues. They were jobs where the only tool that I had was influence. And I would maybe restate that. There were jobs where I didn't have the tool I needed, which was influence, and I had to build it. I think what I learned about influence was people want to be part of the solution. They want to be part of the solution to understand the problem that you're trying to solve. They want to have a voice in the options that are considered and a voice in the process for decision making, even if their way of fixing the problem isn't what you eventually go with. And I think if you use authority, it takes away that ability for them to be engaged as part of the solution. So this is the number one piece of advice that I give leaders as the most important skill they can build is one of influence. Because again, I think what you'll learn, at least what I've learned as I've gotten positions with more and more responsibility, using authority is typically the fastest way to make something fail.
Aaron said something to me. Thank you, David Burns. Aaron said something to me that just kind of blew my mind because, think of you and Aaron and David and Monica, great CIOs, but you all came up, right, together. And Aaron was telling a story about you and he and Dave and others being in a cube farm, like working,
Yeah.
gritting it out. Do you remember those days? Like, I'm like, I can't even picture that team, what that was like.
Very much so. Very early in our careers, working together on tough initiatives and projects. And again, what I loved about those days is everybody had an equal voice. I think that's the other part where I kind of learned the power of the team coming together and having different points of view and making sure that you hear everybody's points of view, even when you may not want to. Again, it's those early formative years. I think that I learned that the most.
Well, good stuff. One more from your GE days, and we're going to kind of double click on one of those traits you mentioned earlier, the storytelling traits. And so listen to this colleague, and I know you'll appreciate this question.
Hello, Jim. A voice from far away. I hope you're doing great. So my question for you is about storytelling, as I always admired your ability to articulate stories about the technology and how technology was important to business transformation. I would suggest you articulate a bit more about how that is important to you, how you build those great skills, and everything that would be important for new leaders coming to these roles.
Angelica, great to hear from you. Angelica, again, leader at CIO over at GE Verona, as they've kind of broken off the what used to be the power of the energy business. It's a great question, Angelica. I think you have to paint a picture of where you're headed if you're going to bring people along for the journey. When I first joined Nationwide, we talked a lot about innovation, around disruption, around kind of the role that technology was going to play. But we had a hard time converting from words to action. We had a hard time kind of getting people to say, okay, yes, these technologies are there, and yes, these capabilities are there, but so what? When I was at GE Digital, I had seen a woman who was presenting to a large group of customers use her family to talk about a medical breakthrough that was being developed. And to this day, I can remember the story, and I remember how it tied to technology. And it left not just a message to me around the technology, but the way she told the story. So when I kind of got to Nationwide and I saw this problem, I started to replicate what I remembered from that experience and enter the story of my daughter, Kat. So when I joined Nationwide, I had a daughter who was just going off for her freshman year in college. And I used her as the view of a future customer over time, where I put together a set of pages that were kind of pictures of her graduating high school, going off to college, humorously trying to get off the Fowler payroll. And getting off the Fowler payroll, Dan, meant that she needed to get her own car insurance, that she was eventually going to set up her own retirement account. And I used my forward-looking view of what I thought her life was going to look like, and the points in life when Nationwide would need to be there to support her, to start to provide a vision for where I thought we were headed from a technology, innovation, and product perspective. I was shocked at the outpouring of feedback that I got on presenting it in that way. Like, there were no technology slides, there were no architectural pictures of what the future was going to look like. It was the visibility of my daughter buying her first policy for her home, or her apartment, and for her car, and the view of her having her first child and how that would lead to a life insurance experience, and the discussion of starting your own business and needing to have a retirement plan, and just kind of using those life points to talk about how technology was going to make it different. It was probably one of the most meaningful stories I ever told. And so, again, when I come back to, I think you just got to figure out the way that makes it personal for people, where they can relate to what you're telling them in their life, but see the vision of where you're headed in that discussion. And so, again, I've learned this is the most powerful way I can have a conversation, is to turn it into a story that somebody can relate to.
Yeah, that's powerful. And in a story of a customer, I mean, you could personalize it, right? We'll talk more about your customers here in a minute. So thank you, Angelica. And, uh, Jim, people know me well, know that I'm a student of the CIOism, those great expressions you all use. And so I was talking with some of your current team. I'm like, hey, give me a couple of great Jimisms. And they said, well, even better, we have Jim face-isms. What are the faces of Jim? What were they talking about there?
I have zero poker face, Dan. I tend to wear my feelings on my sleeve. In fact, if you kind of go back in my performance appraisals, you will find that. I remember Greg Simpson giving me feedback one day. He was a great CTO at General Electric, and he said, "Hey Jim, you gotta stop wearing your feelings on your sleeve." I got to be honest, his feedback didn't work because I still do it today. If you ask my team, I've got some tells. So one, if you watch my face expressions, you know where I'm at. My CTO Todd would tell you my biggest tell is my leg. If my leg starts bouncing, I'm done with the topic and want to move on. Which I got to be honest, this can be a bad thing. I have to be careful that I don't let my mannerisms tell a story that shuts down a conversation too early. And so this is something I'm still trying to work on and hide. I do think they did miss a couple of CIOisms. I used to get made fun of all the time because I would start every conversation with how I'm thinking about it is ... But I've got a new one. So I've been reading a little bit of Brene Brown from a leadership perspective, and I love her rumble language. And so one that I've come to adopt, because conflict is never easy to deal with, is starting off a conversation when you're talking to somebody about something that happened that you are concerned about with, hey, the story I made up in my mind when X happened, or you said X, is this, and putting it on me and not them, and letting them clarify if I really got it right. So again, I'm trying to come up with some new CIOisms from other people that are more productive than wearing my feelings on my sleeve.
That is really good, Jim. I'm going to try that. That's brilliant, and really create a different conversation, and really, really good. One more thing on the GE front, and for those who are watching us on video on YouTube, they're going to see a picture of what we refer to, or what's referred to as the GE Mafia. And this is not like Mafia, but tell us what that is, because GE is known as cranking out probably the most Fortune caliber CIOs ever.
Yeah, Dan, this still amazes me to this day. And I'll off the top of my head, I'll say a couple of company names: United Airlines, Marathon, DXC, McKesson, JB Hunt, AIG, USAA, Wells Fargo, Raytheon, Eaton, and I could keep going. All have or had a CIO or CTO who had a career at some point in their life, and most likely came up through the leadership programs at GE. It is an incredible fraternity of leaders that came out of a development program that I've not seen replicated. I give credit to Gary Reiner, who was the group CIO when I came into GE. He had a fantastic HR partner and a woman named Lynn Boyd, who developed a series of leadership programs, both our entry-level and mid-career leadership programs for technology, that took you through, if you came in out of college, the first 2 years of your career, mid-career, if you were ready for kind of that first big executive leadership role, you went through an executive leadership program that was technology specific, that and taught you how to be a better technology leader, and built off of the GE leadership programs of management development course and the executive development course and business management courses that were there as part of Crotonville, which I'd say in the divestiture of the GE business is the biggest casualty that they're losing, is losing Crotonville and losing those development courses. I think what was powerful about them is they were usually rotational. When I was in some of these programs, I would be in business A, but be assigned to business B. That ability to see other business units and functions was so powerful because you got to see a different perspective than your own. Um, and I think that the second part of it was really something that Jeff Immelt brought is that leaders have a point of view. In fact, I used to say that on the wall of the leadership program is leaders have a point of view. And if you were ever in a discussion with with uh, with Jeff, he would ask you what your point of view was. And one of the worst things is if you really didn't bring it or you weren't honest about it, because sometimes your point of view was going to be different, and that was encouraged. And I say that was it. But I would say the other part of it um, is there were tough challenges and unachievable goals that were out there. Guys like Larry Biagini, who was a technical stalwart depth. He drove a lot of the initiatives with everything early on, one of the first companies to do single sign-on, and you had to be there within 3 months. Like there was no pass to be there in 12 months or 18 or 24 months. It was 3 months or you were going to shut down your app. I think those were really tough challenges that showed us what we could really do. Now, as for the mafia comment, I think I'd rather call it the G family. And I use family very specifically because they always pick up the phone. They don't always tell you what you want to hear, but will tell you what you need to hear, whether you like it or not. And then lastly, they'll show up with coffee and Red Bull when you have an issue, and they'll be there in force. And so everyone, it's the fun part about this is you've had a few of them on here asking me questions. The reality is I can pick up my phone right now and they'll answer. And if I got a problem, they'll be there to help. And if I'm screwing up, they'll call me back and they'll tell me. And I think that family, that network of family members across the industry right now is so powerful, at least for me as a leader.
Definitely a family, powerful. Just get that shared experience. It's interesting because if you look at the LinkedIn profiles of all of you, you all had tours in different GE companies as well. You were in different industries and ran different businesses, and just fascinating, which pretty special. We just don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I think that was part of the secret sauce, Dan. I'm a big fan of rotating people through roles. I think if you can't get them to see other industries and other jobs, then you at least got to get them through roles because every one of, I was in aviation, I was in intelligent platform, I was in power, I was in capital. I got learnings in every one of those that I would have never had I stayed in just one industry. I think that's part of what made GE such a great talent development. And frankly, if you are a publicly traded company today, it's hard to have that. It's not rewarded. So I think that's one of the casualties that you got to find other ways, which is I think why we see so many people moving between different companies today.
Yeah, great point. Well, I want to pivot to your nationwide story. It's a pretty special story. You made big news. I think it was about 6 years ago. I mean, you were almost a couple decades at GE. You were flying high, doing big things, as Aaron said. And I just love to know, like, what was it that attracted you there? I know you went with high expectations. How's 6 years? I guess it turned out okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Dan, it was a job I never expected to have or want. I remember getting the call from Mike Keller was retiring in a long, successful career here at Nationwide. I got a call from a recruiter who was looking for somebody to come in and talk to them. And I said, my first answer was, I don't know that I'm an insurance guy. And the recruiter said, hey, well, trust me, I know these guys. Just come talk to them. I think you'll be surprised. And he wanted to see something outside of their industry. And so I came up, and my first set of interviews was a panel interview with three individuals that were in an interview process to become the new CEO of the company, and which was an interesting place to be. And they interviewed me together, and I remember the discussion vividly because all three of them said the same thing. It was 100-year-old protection company. That is in an industry that's about to be disrupted. We want a partner to help us disrupt ourselves so that we aren't disrupted. And we're looking for somebody who knows how to come and do big and hard things, but somebody who's also a visionary that can help us on a path to the future. And I remember walking out of the interview, calling my wife saying, so a ninth family move wouldn't be so bad, right? which was an interesting conversation. And then I came back a few weeks later and I met with the current CEO at that point. And he'd been with, again, Steve Rasmussen. Steve had been at Nationwide for his entire career. He was in his mid to late 60s, 42 years with the company. I come in expecting a little bit of a Luddite, maybe not tech forward. And I remember the only devices in his office were his iPad and his Apple Watch. And kind of blew me away with the same discussion, right? 100 years old, won't be here if we don't disrupt ourselves, looking for a partner in that. And then met with the board, same discussion. In fact, two board members I have are in the agriculture industry, and we had a discussion on automation that's happening in farming and why can't Nationwide be as good as the ag community.
Oh my gosh.
It was, Dan, it was a set of conversations that I couldn't have gone any better. And it was really this idea that we need a partner in innovation. We're looking for somebody to be with a real seat at the C-suite table that is engaged in helping us set company strategy. And I'd say for the past 6 years, that's exactly what I've seen. And I've had a voice. I've had a role to play. I've got a fantastic team to support what we're doing. And both a set of peers and a board that are all in.
Mm. Well, you mentioned the ask of come in and help us disrupt ourselves. And something you shared with me a while back that has just resonated with me so many times, Jim. And I've shared with the people, it's like, I think you said something like, we became activist investors on ourselves. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So a little bit about Nationwide. Nationwide is a mutual insurance company. So we are owned by our members. And I think we'd like to say we're a modern mutual. And so there's no stockholder. There's no, somebody that's coming every quarter saying, did you hit a set of numbers? Which is a great place to be when you're trying to invest and being able to make decisions that you think are right for the business. But sometimes without external investors, it can get easy to become complacent in a mutual company. And so what this leadership team has been very specific about is measuring our performance against the industry, looking at how our profitability, our operations metrics, our quality metrics, and with a goal to be in the top half of the industry from a performance perspective. It's led us to run a set of initiatives over the past 3 years to take $1 billion and $1.5 billion cost out to achieve parity with our peers. We've now gone from just over $40 billion in top line of sales to over $60 billion last year. And we're doing it with almost the same number of people that we had when we had 40 billion. And so as a leadership team, we've said, look, we're going to be our own activist investors because it's what's going to make sure on top of things like innovation, we've got to run the company really well. It's kind of that same discussion we had earlier about you got to operate well if you're going to invest. And so this activist investor idea that our CEO, Kurt Walker, and our CFO have really been, Tim has been really focused on is really to make sure that we're operating the place effectively, that we're using the capital that we have from our members effectively to serve them. So again, not serve the stockholder, but serve the member.
Now there's the investor part of activist investors. My guess, you probably needed a couple of bucks when you got there to go do the big things you had to do. I don't know if you can talk about that publicly, but did you get the support you needed?
Yeah, I find myself in a really different world here. In past roles at GE and others, I many times had to fight with the CFOs to spend more money on technology. I'll just say it this way. I actually spend more time convincing my business partners to actually spend less. There's no lack of desire to invest in technology, holding ourselves accountable for the business cases that need to accompany the dollars and our ability to have the right subject matter experts engaged to be able to deliver has been where I've had to spend more of my time. And so the company is absolutely willing to invest where they see an outcome. And I think that is the beauty of working for a mutual company. We can make long-term investment decisions that if we were a publicly traded company, we would never be able to do. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, good stuff. And I want to get you talking about your business. You got some unique businesses, customer mix. We all know the expression, customers can vote with their wallet. You talk about how they also vote with their watch, which I think is just fascinating.
Yeah, so Dan, when people think about Nationwide, they kind of go to the jingle and they think about their home and auto insurance. That's one of our 8 businesses. And so when you look at Nationwide today, about 60 to 65% of our top line is actually driven from financial services. And the remainder is property and casualty. And within property and casualty, personal lines insurance that you or I would buy is, maybe 10% of the overall company. It's a very small piece. But again, I recognize that's what people think about. So you think about financial services, retirement solutions, an annuity business, a life insurance business, a specialty financing business that sits there for large corporations. And then on the property and casualty business, there's a specialty business, a commercial business, and a personal lines business, and an agriculture business. And so kind of 8 different businesses that are kind of out there running the back end of the company. There's a pet business in there as well. And the way we run the company is we have a set of target expected returns that we're looking at for each one of those businesses. And so we manage capital allocation kind of based on that. We are one of the last diversified insurance companies left. And I would tell you, it is our superpower. If we were publicly traded, investors would come in and they would want to break us up into individual pools of businesses that had similar returns. But because we're a mutual, our superpower is actually the diversity of the businesses that we have. It's a way for us to diversify risk in a very different way than an investor would. An investor would say, I'm going to pick the best of the products. We think about needing the best of the products to be able to spread the risk across multiple business units. So think about weather. Weather has been a real problem for parts of our property and casualty business for the last kind of 5+ years, and have been a big cost. Well, how we manage the risk is we have a large financial services business that has great returns that offsets the losses that we might have in other parts of the business. So this diversification for us has been great. Now, our customer, though, is kind of where you are going with this conversation, and we're intermediated. We really do not sell products direct to consumers anymore. We've exited the nationwide shingle that used to be out there where we had our own exclusive agents. We've gone to an independent agent model within property casualty, and within our financial services business, it's brokers and other intermediaries that we sell through. And in both cases, there's consolidation happening where there's a smaller number of larger intermediaries who now sell our products. And so that's where the watch over wallet comes. All of them expect us to be in the top 2 or 3 of cost. But being in the top 2 or 3 of cost and being able to transact with them faster with less friction matters. And so sometimes we'll find that our intermediaries will do business with the carrier or the provider who has the least amount of friction in the buying process. And so a lot of our customer centricity from a business strategy perspective have been, how do we use technology to be able to reduce the friction of doing business? So we're API enabled. We're plugging our APIs into every one of our customers' business systems. We're trying to get zero touch flow of product underwriting and binding and billing back to those intermediaries because we recognize that for them, the more speed and the more that they can close, their businesses are based more on volume at this point, and they're looking for providers that can support them in their strategy.
That's incredible. I appreciate you taking us through that story, and just having those diversified businesses be able to, when times are down in that one business, still giving that great customer service, right? Because you can cover it in other ways. Jim, you would be very upset with me if I didn't ask you about your nationwide technology team, because you brag on them all the time. So take us inside. What's that look like? Size, scale, complexity, and I think you can put them up as a model of what does great look like in 2025. So what's it like to work there?
Yeah, 4,500 technology associates, additional 2,000 contractors. The nationwide workforce is located primarily in Columbus, Des Moines, Iowa, and Scottsdale, Arizona. So Columbus, Ohio is our headquarters. We're made up of about 300 agile lines organized in what we call business solution areas. So you think about those 8 business units and then the associated functions. Each one of them has a business solution area team that are the lines that make up the support and build teams for technologies used by the different business areas of the company. We're in a transition to more of a product-based organization. We call them journey teams that are taking the agile work that we've already been doing and adding in business subject matter experts and technology experts who are working together more as mission-based teams working on specific problems. My directs are some of the best people I've ever worked with in my life. Sometimes when you come in from the outside, you inherit a team that is underperforming, and for me, it was quite the opposite. I inherited a team that was overperforming the rest of the industry, and for me, it's been about continuing to elevate their roles, and they're doing the same with the people underneath them. Our biggest opportunity is to continue to grow technical talent and making sure we're finding the right talent from the outside and building talent from the inside. I think we're working on some of the same kind of talent development processes that we talked about at GE, making sure that we have them here at Nationwide. But I'm really proud of what this team has done. We've accomplished in the last 6 years some pretty amazing things. And for me, it all comes back to the talent of that team.
Jim, we could spend a lot of time, we could spend a whole podcast talking about you've got some big rocks, right? Some pillars, like you call them. Could you just give us kind of a highlight of what you've got the team focused on right now?
Yeah, Dan, 4 things in kind of in this order. The first is core systems modernization, and we're at the end of that journey. I've got one large mainframe application left. We finish that over the next year and a half. Each one of the 8 business units will have one common system of record. So for others, think about that as ERP modernization. Each business will now have a modern core system of record. We've been using those underlying technologies to expose our products and services digitally. So we're API first. We'll do 25 billion API transactions this year. Many of those going outside into those intermediaries I talked about earlier, letting them connect their systems into our systems. We've been focused on this idea of journey management and really creating personalized customer journeys and products. On the product side, it's everything from our smart home products to our telematics products. On the journey side, it's how do I take an onboard a retirement solutions member or participant in hours versus days and months, and making sure that they can kind of get into the market and get their retirement started faster. And then the new one that we've really added in the last kind of 2 years is really augmenting the intelligence of our workforce. The last 10 years, we've been heavily invested in AI. But in the last 2 years, we've really been focused on how do I give better tools to help take the clerical work out of the workforce and let them focus on the things they do that are more important to us, the empathy, the judgment, the critical thinking skills. That's really the 4 pillars that we're focused on and continue to support where the business strategy is headed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we had Rob Carter on not too long ago, and he talked about, one of the gifts his team gave him on the way out on retirement was retiring the mainframe. And it's a big deal. That's a big
Huge
deal.
deal.
And yeah, so I think it was Roosevelt who had the quote, "People don't care what you know until they know you care." And I think that's one of your superpowers. In fact, I know it's one of your superpowers, Jim, because the next mystery question is gonna help us shine the light on that. And also one of your hobbies that I was not aware of. So listen in and tell us who this is, and I think you'll appreciate the question.
So you have a personal hobby that you use to help recognize associates that have gone above and beyond. Can you share a bit more about the hobby and the meaning behind the recognition?
So thanks to Misty Cuomo, who is our CTO for corporate technology, for asking that question. What I love about Misty is the impact that she's had on Nationwide in a short time. but more importantly, her ability to coach. And I would tell you, finding people that work for you that are willing to coach you too is a pretty powerful thing. My personal hobby, I think my wife is really worried that someday when I retire that I'm going to be a thorn in her side. And so she's really been pushing me hard to make sure that I have a hobby. And so I recently, in the last couple of years, picked up woodworking. And it started off with me making chessboards as a gift. I made chessboards for my team, and they were polite enough and didn't make comments about poor workmanship because I'm still learning. But it was kind of a fun little thing for me to do, and it was something I could do outside of work. And we've kind of played it forward where we now give 2 employees in technology every quarter are highlighted with something called the Soaring Eagle Award. Soaring Eagle Award represents somebody who has good distance, right? Can see in the future. Somebody who is a leader, somebody who is family oriented in how they have the leadership style that is more servant leadership. And so what we did for that is I actually make the award. So it's a wooden plaque that I produce every quarter. And so we've now turned my hobby into a way of creating this award that highlights 2 associates every quarter. So that's where it's gone. I think you have to be, I have responded best in my career to leaders who are servant leaders, who have a strong caring about me as an individual. And I try to emulate a lot of those leaders in my style. And this is one way I do it.
I'd love to come see you in your wood shop, Jim. It's just like the whole different side of Jim Fowler, right? From corporate executive to just getting dirty, getting sawdust all over him.
Just don't expect 90-degree angles, which is a bad thing for a woodworker. But I am not the perfectionist that I'm going to need to be if I'm going to continue this hobby.
That's funny. Well, just keep all your digits. Just be careful there. That's all. Anyways, another mystery question for you. You care a lot about your profession, your communities, the communities you work in, that Nationwide's in. So got another special person here that I think you'll appreciate.
One of the things I admire about Jim and his role at Nationwide is his personal and professional commitment to uplifting the community in Columbus and Ohio, and honestly across the United States. One of the things that has really stuck with me is his desire and commitment to doing well and also doing good. He does that in his personal life and professional life. And I'd like to know more about what would he say is one of the most impactful organizations he's worked with, or board he's been on, or anything he's really seen have such meaningful change that continues to inspire him.
Caroline and I have for the last couple of years been working on getting a community of CIOs in Ohio together on a more regular basis. So Caroline, thank you for asking that question and for your leadership for Ohio CIOs. We do appreciate it. I'd say it isn't one org for me, but it's a category of organizations that I'm really passionate about. And I'm going to put them into this workforce development category, Dan, in specifically those organizations that focus on young adults or a group of people that might be known as opportunity youth. These are young adults, usually between the ages of 18 to kind of late 20s. And they're a group of people who haven't really had the same opportunities that maybe I had growing up, right? They didn't necessarily have the right school experience. They might have had one parent that was working 2 jobs to support them, so they didn't always have kind of the oversight and guidance they needed. And they're left with a path that gets them to, at best, a minimum wage job. And so the organizations that I have been involved with are focused on that population that have had things that have been working against them. And we need them. Right? We have a shrinking workforce in the United States. We need to find ways to help raise the abilities of these really capable adults who are looking for great careers. And so kind of 3 organizations for me that have been, first and foremost, Europe, which in about 20 cities around the US has really been focused on this opportunity youth path and how do they give them a set of skills to get into a workforce. I'm I just rolling off as the board chair at Columbus State Community College. They service about 40,000 people a year coming through for continuing education or to get an associate's or now a bachelor's degree. Again, serving a lot of the workforce in the Metro Columbus area. And then other organizations like Auticon, who's kind of focused on adults and young adults who are on the spectrum and have a really magical set of special skills that in the technology space are needed, but need a little bit of support on how to get into those roles. And so this has been my passion. This is where I put my time and my effort and my dollars in a place that's been really important to me.
Incredible. Yeah. Rob Mills, we just had a podcast with Rob from Tractor Supply, and he gifted his scholarship in our Tech for Good program to Nashville Community College, and same idea, just incredible work. And so thank you, Caroline. I mean, Caroline is just special person. She loves all things CIO. She leads it on the field every day. So really appreciate her. And just a good segue for our next question, Jim, which is, we've donated over $350,000 in scholarships to our 9-month leadership program, TechLX. And so, as you know, we give our guests the ability to name a scholarship recipient. So I think I have a hunch, but do you have somebody in mind that you think would be a great, deserving recipient of that?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Europe. Dan, I know they'll put it to good use, and it will be helpful to them for sure.
That's awesome. And thanks for your work. You're on the board of Europe, the national board, right? And talk about an organization that's making a real impact in lives, in our industry, our country. And you probably know Gary Flowers.
Another great CIO out there, somebody who I have a lot of respect for. CIO of the year last year for nonprofits in the Florida region. Great guy.
Yeah, great guy. And he, I think they've been the beneficiary 3 or 4 times of the scholarship, and Gary puts these to really good use. So thank you for that. Jim, I've got a mystery question here I say for the end. And, it's, you learn a lot about somebody when you see them under pressure. You've been under a lot of pressure, how they handle a situation. So this could be your most challenging mystery question yet. So listen in and have some fun with this.
One of the things I admire most about you is how you handle conflict. Can you share a story where you turned a disagreement into a productive conversation and what strategies you use to resolve conflict? Also, if you had to choose a character from a movie or TV show that best represents your leadership style, who would it be and why?
Wow. Who is that?
You're going to make me cry.
That's why I say this for the end, Jim. This one is, I'm going to give you a minute. It's Aaron's fault. I'm like, Aaron, I would love to get this special person on the podcast with a mystery question. And I think within 15 minutes, we had it set up. Aaron's like, that is awesome. We're going to do this. So anyways, thank you, Aaron, for teeing this up. But yeah, love to have you talk about this amazing person.
So that's my daughter, Joey. Joey just finished her senior year in college. She, I would say, graduated with a degree in marketing. It was really a degree in lacrosse, which I would say was a master's in leadership. If you're interested, I wrote an article about it that you can find on LinkedIn. But I've got 3 fantastic kids who teach me every day what it means to be a good leader and to grow. And so really proud of them. I had a lot of different opportunities in my career to work with different people. And this idea of handling conflict is something that comes back time and time again. And so there's a story that when this comes up, I come to every time. I had a meeting with a business partner. It was kind of 5:30 at night. We've been trying to get together all week about budget. We're kind of in the last week of kind of setting budgets for the next year. And I went in and I sat down with this leader, and he's like, "Hey, Jimmy," he's like, "I come in every day. I turn on my PC. It boots up. Excel just works. I think your budget just needs to be 0 because everything's working." And And so I was taken back for about 2 seconds. And then I think I threw him off because I said, oh, okay, well, that's great. And then I started walking through his business process from forecasting of product and development to how that feeds into the manufacturing process and the supply chain process and how that sets labor targets throughout the year. And so if we're not going to spend any money on that, then that must mean we're not going to make any product this year, which means you might as well just shut down those plants because you must not need the people that are going to run through them. And I went, and I was methodical, and I went process by process for him. And by the end of the conversation, I demonstrated an understanding of his business process that I don't think even he had at that point. I think I pointed out some things about the way his organization ran that he didn't know. And so I think my advice to my daughter Joey and to my son Gray and my other daughter Kat is really that when you are faced with tough situations, you don't back down. You don't retreat. I watched Joey is the one asking the question. I watched her do this on the field for 10 plus years in her lacrosse career. And I would say it's a learning I took from her, not her taking it from me, is that when things get tough, hold your ground, don't back down. And so I'd say, no one said my one that I didn't have a Jimism. I'd say there is a Jimism that nobody called out, and it's the word peace. Is that I'm not going to back down, but at the end of the conversation, I'm not necessarily going to agree with you. And so if I say peace, it means we can agree to disagree and walk away from the conversation. Sometimes that's the best route you can take in those situations.
Incredible. I love that response. Just one of those big magical moments, right? And, Joey, thank you. Her second part of her question was, and she answers this for me, by the way. So I'm going to check your answer with her answer. She asked, choose a character from a movie or TV show that best represents your leadership style. And who would that be and why?
Yeah, so I thought about this, and I would pick Ted Lasso, and I'll say he's the modern day view of Andy Griffith. I happen to be in North Carolina today, and I think what makes the two of them common, and who if I'm not, I would want to be like, is they're both servant leaders. They don't follow conventional norms. They push people to be their best, and they find whatever creative way they can to get it out of them. But they're there to have the back of everybody else when they need it. So it's that would be my pick. Now, what did she say? I'm scared to hear this.
So Joey said that you would be Mr. Incredible from The Incredibles. And I didn't know who that, I had to go look it up. And the description of the personality is he's nice, friendly, strong, brave, fatherly, heroic, and pleasant.
Yeah, she might have a little bit of a jaded view. I think she's, but I appreciate that. That's a good one. We are a Marvel family, so you would figure that out.
Well, that works. So I asked her. I said, tell me about your dad. And I say this whole last because you're probably not going to be able to talk after this. But she said, my dad is the best dad on the planet because of his huge heart. He will move heaven and earth to make me, my siblings, and my amazing mother happy. Good job, Dad.
Make me cry, Dan.
To have your kid say that, that's just really special. So Joey's going to go and do great things. I would recommend, so on Jim's LinkedIn profile is an article you wrote about leadership through what you learned through her college lacrosse team. It was really, really amazing. So, well, Jim, we're kind of at the end of the line here. I can't thank you enough to be authentic and vulnerable and just have fun with this. And I've learned so much. I know our audience is going to be inspired. We're going to do an article together. I've got a whole bunch more questions I want to ask you, but hope it was fun for you too.
It was, Dan. And again, I never expected who your last one was going to be. And maybe that's what I'll leave you with is my career is my family's career. My wife, my kids, they gave up a lot for me to do what I do. And I think that's important for all of us to remember. So I'm happy that that was the comment that she gave you, but I would just tell you, my family has been meant the life for me and been able to enable me to do what I do today. So I think it's something we shouldn't all take for granted.
Yeah, no, amazing, amazing. Well, for our audience, you just received an executive MBA and what achieving greatness looks like as a CIO at any level of leadership. And so I know a lot of great leaders have their playbook. I promise you, you just picked up some nuggets to add to your playbook. And if you don't have a playbook, a leadership playbook, go back, listen to this again, watch it again, pause it, take notes. Jim's a Hall of Famer for a reason here. So just so special. And Jim, on behalf of everybody, I can't thank you enough for your time, your thought leadership, giving back to our profession year up and all these organizations, and really defining what great leadership looks like. So thanks so much for all you are and all you do.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.